to What in the World, brought to you by Great World Productions. I'm your host, Isaac, and joined once again by co host Jacob Fulmer. Jake, what in the world are we looking at tonight?
Well, we're going to continue through our second section here in this first series on what in the world with question number 7. What's the purpose of art?
Oh, well, absolutely. That's a great question to get things started off with. And this particular round of questions that we've gone through, again, which we started in our last episode. If you didn't catch that, you'll want to check out our most recent episode, but just before this one here on What in the World. Come back and watch this one, which you can easily do. All that found easily available on YouTube, and again, now on a few other platforms. So, what is the purpose of art? Well, I'd say put simply, and this kind of ties into what was it, a couple episodes ago of What in the World? We talked about the transcendentals, goodness, truth, beauty, and well, I'd say the purpose of art, generally speaking, is to convey beauty. And again, serves certain purposes. Again, there are many types of art. It takes many different forms. Of course, you got paintings, you've got different types of music, all sorts of different things. Literature, be considered art. Again, all sorts of different things. And in terms of its central purpose or what exactly it is, well, that'd be my take. Jake, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think art also is a display of the creation from human intelligence. I think that also kind of comes into it. What sort of intelligence do we have to create things? But it also comes behind our creativity, I think, as humans as well. And so it kind of taps into that creative side of our intelligence. And so I think it's a really good display of that. And so I think that's kind of what the purpose of art is. It's just to kind of display the creative nature that is built within us. And it's kind of interesting that we have a creator, and then the creator made us to become lesser creators of artwork, you could say. And so if you look at if you look at us as artwork of God, then you could say that we're artwork creating more artwork, if you look at it like that.
Absolutely, certainly, and again, a very important part, certainly, in light of creation. Naturally, as many people create art, we too, of course, were created with purpose. Certainly, have a calling, a vocation. Each one of us, whatever that may be. If you're not sure what yours is, that's all right. Again, for some people, I admire the people who are great at art and different things. Certainly, in terms of painting, can't say I'm much of a painter myself. And interestingly enough, of course, this discussion of art has come up in recent times that really does say something about a society, what kind of art they produce. And again, it's very easy for us in our modern age, certainly in recent times, to be puffed up about all these advances and certainly modern medicine, modern dentistry. Those, again, are feats of just the different things that the great things that humans can do with free will. But again, naturally, there are things just as well that can be learned that can be taken from the past. And again, in recent times, sort of, it's fallen somewhat out of fashion, it would seem. Talking about things from the Middle Ages, I always say, oh, those are the Dark Ages. Oh, there was a lot of sickness and plague and different things, and those things certainly were present. But it's often that we just discard the art and the different things from those times again as irrelevant. But again, oftentimes a great deal of thought went into that, and of course, we look at obviously. Relatively speaking, things here in the United States are new in terms of structures, in terms of architecture, which is also a type of art, and we see that in much older architecture. Uh, that a great deal of thought went into a lot of these things. Certainly, old, beautiful churches come to mind. Certainly, as we covered in the past, as it burned recently. I believe it was what year was it? Was it 2019 that it burned? It was 2024 that it was restored, and we covered on our end of the year. That was our first GWP season finale. But just one thing that comes to mind in terms of art, in terms of architecture and beautiful buildings, the way sort of that we used to do things. And we get this idea that people who built them, who designed them, weren't smart. Well, um, they were designed perhaps very intentionally, and just in the restoration process of the Cathedral of Notre Dame there in Paris, France, just a few years ago. Well, we see there are certain things we hadn't constructed things that way in a long time, and it was by somewhat of a miracle. It was, of course, designed based on a rendering of the cathedral from a video game. So things like that, art from those periods, and bringing things back up to today's day and age, where again you have architecture, different things. It's more reminiscent of a shoebox or something, not so much character. Many of these buildings that we see today, this day and age, in terms of there is always the common criticism of modern art. Many have seen this again, this gallery where it's banana taped to a wall, which is considered modern art. So, just an interesting point to note there. Again, many things, modern medicine, modern dentistry, that we do well today, but again, a great many things that we've neglected in recent times that could be learned from the past. Jake?
Yes, and so I think that brings up an interesting point is that when we first think of the word art or when we think about art in general, we most of the time we're thinking of a sketch or some sort of painting, but art doesn't, it encompasses a much larger, realm of things, I guess you could say. And so the purpose of art is not just colorful paintings, it's also, again, it's creation by people through many different outlooks, not just certain paintings or drawings. And so, well, that wraps things up on the first question, but we got one more question for this week's What in the World segment. We'll go into question number 8 of this series. Why do humans search for meaning? And so, this is quite a change in topic, I would say. Um, I think this kind of goes, I think if I remember correctly, we had another question in the last series that was very similar to this. So this kind of is almost a repeated question in a way, where it had to do with why do people want to be heard, or I don't quite remember, not quite recalling what
Right,
that question
right.
was.
I certainly recall that, Jake, now that you mention it. It sounds very, very familiar. I remember some sort of very similarly worded existential question in one of our past editions of What in the World? And Jake, I don't know about you, but I suppose my answer on that, yes, that was the similar question that we had. Why do human beings crave belonging so deeply? And this most recent one, what was it? It was why do human beings search for meaning? So, meaning, belonging, those are oftentimes used synonymously. One might say this is essentially the same question. And I suppose that my answer would be the same. Put simply, of course, as we talked about previously, and you mentioned this was something, I suppose you could say it's a departure from our last question, what is art? But again, in terms of the central question, what we're getting to about, what is art and why do people do it? Um, well, for many people, again, that is their source of meaning, that is their vocation. So I wouldn't say these are too terribly distant from each other in terms of how the topics relate. But again, my answer here would be similar to that very similar question, naturally, that we had on a past edition of What in the World, and that would be that, well, we as human beings were created, again, a sort of fine-tuned design, as it were. We were created for a purpose, it would seem, and naturally, we know that we are coupling. We are social creatures. Again, naturally, is why we interact with and build societies and different things. And again, there's sort of something very fundamental about that to human nature as it were. Why do we search for meaning? That's sort of, I suppose, part of being part of society and contributing something to it, being a part of something bigger than yourself. Does that make sense, Jake?
Yeah, I think so. I think you found a really good connection between this question and the previous question that we covered in this very same edition. And as far as an additional connection that I would say, if we were to expand the word art that was in the last question to anything created by people, then I guess you could say that all people are searching for the meaning through what their art is. And so you could say that all people create are creators. You could say that all people create arts or just art in general. And so, therefore, you could say that all humans search for meaning just in general through their works. A lot of people like to do a lot of good things, like they like to create a lot of great things through this artwork. And so, they create all of that artwork so that they have meaning. And so, they're searching for their meaning within that. And so, in fact, I'm going to go back to that previous question. What's the purpose of art? You could tie that into this question by saying the purpose of art is to create meaning that humans are constantly searching for through their creation. So I think that's kind of a way to link those two questions together.
Yeah, absolutely, Jake. That makes sense, and great point there. Through a broad enough lens, again, anything that is creative, we could consider art. Now, certainly from a traditional understanding, of course, in terms of different callings, in terms of different pursuits in life, they're generally broken down into three different categories. Generally, you'll find yourself either in a trade, an art, or mystery. Again, those different things there. Of course, art, which we already explained at length. It's again those sort of things. You're sort of conveying a beauty in those different things. Music, paintings, different things like that. Just a few examples that come to mind. Again, different trades involve different things in businesses, which there is just as much for a demand for plumbers, electricians, all sorts of things. And in terms of what's more contemplative, in terms of what's more, again, philosophical, which, of course, there is just as much a role for that. Certainly, the academic life, structures, and different things like that would consider mysteries. So, again, important distinctions to make there, but Jake, as you mentioned, through a broad enough lens, there is an artistic element to all of that. And naturally, that sort of has been a common theme across the season, which we'll continue to explore, I'm sure, is vocations. Again, finding meaning or your calling. What exactly are you called to? Again, many people aren't quite sure of that, but we can be any assistance, you can gain any additional insight. Well, hope that our words here have been useful, beneficial to you, and I believe that about wraps things up, Jake. If there's nothing else that you might add,
Yes, that would be the end here for
all righty.
tonight on this edition.
Well, I suppose it does. So, with that, we conclude again this edition of What in the World. So, until next time.
I'm Jacob Fulmer.
I'm Isaac Hedges, host of Great World Productions. From all of us at What in the World and Great World Productions, good night and God bless.